Hello, welcome. This is going to be lesson 1 for chapter 5. And today we are going to start with a warm-up, which I'll show you on Schoology. Then our main objectives today are to define what conscience is, and also contrast that with what it is not. And that's going to be our main goal for today's lesson. We began the lesson, if you were absent, with a warm-up. It's called Classwork 5.20 Born Moral. Here you see this is a video we watched in class. I'll show you where this is on Schoology in a second. We watched it during class, and then we answered a discussion on Schoology about it and discussed it in class as well. Let me show you where it is. Please double check with me as to whether or not you need to make this up if you are absent. So for this chapter, we are in, we are in the pink chapter 5 folder, which you see here. If you notice, we skipped chapter 5. So, I strike that. We skipped chapter 4. So this is a chapter we'll be working out of. Go inside the folder. Come on. There we go. Classwork and discussions. Classwork. The classwork we did for the first lesson was classwork 2.50 Born Moral. And if we open that up, here you can see the link to the 60 Minutes video. It's from 2012, and it talks about possible scientific origins, proof for morality and a conscience. So watch this video, then we answered the discussion post. What do you make of the 60 Minutes report? What were the findings, and how do the findings support the idea of natural moral law? In what ways might the study contradict it? And if you scroll down, you'll see the different responses people put here. So please check with me as to whether or not you need to make up that assignment. All right, and after that we began the first lecture. Your book starts off with asking the question, what the conscience, or answering the question, what the conscience is not. And so rather than defining it, they want to first contrast it with some sort of popular understanding. So let's take a look at them now. The first is majority opinion. So this would be the attitude that, well, everyone's doing it, so it must be okay, using the majority's opinion to judge right from wrong. The problem with this is it surrenders personal responsibility, because you're not deciding for yourself whether or not it's right or wrong, you're going with everyone else, to the group or latest survey. Deciding what's right and wrong is not based on a popularity contest. If it were, we would be in big trouble. Think about the example of Adolf Hitler coming to power in Nazi Germany. He was elected by the people. He managed through his propaganda to convince an entire nation that the Jewish people were a subhuman race, and to try to eradicate them from the face of the earth. So, and that was the popular opinion of his time. Think of in the United States, slavery was the popular opinion of the southern United States, but that didn't make it right. So majority opinion is not a good indicator of what's right and wrong. A feeling. So a feeling, maybe an emotion. The issue with this is it holds the individuals or the creators of their own moral rules, and they're only answerable to themselves. So morality becomes completely subjective. If it feels good, do it. Well, the problem there with that, again, attitude is it's completely subjective. It's not basing morality on an objective standard of right or wrong. And of course, we know there's a lot of things that feel good that aren't good for us. Also, sincerity becomes the prime value. As long as I feel okay with it, it's fine. But we need to remember feelings can be out of touch with reality. Remember, doing drugs feels good, but we know objectively that doing drugs isn't good for us. We can become addicted and they can ultimately lead to our deaths. So just basing what's right and wrong on a feeling is not a good idea. The superego, this comes from Freud. I don't know if I spelled his name right, but he's the father of psychoanalytics. And he argued that ultimately the conscience was imposed upon us from without. He denies the existence of God and says it's a guilty feeling that was imposed upon us by our parents, that we internalize because we want to have moral approval of a father type figure, and we want to try not to incur disapproval. And the problem with this is, as Christians, we believe the conscience is a deeply personal thing. It is not imposed from without. Rather, it's our inner response to God. So we don't believe that, like Freud did, that the conscience was just an internalization of the authority figure, and it only responds to threats and to guilt. Rather, it's the deepest part of ourself that responds to God, not out of fear, but out of love. Next, gut instinct. Now, gut instinct can be important because our conscience, sometimes it's the deepest part of the self and it has a sort of immediate sense of what's right and wrong. However, the gut instinct can be tricky because we need to always judge what's right and wrong against objective standards and use human reason. So your gut instinct is a good starting place, but you always have to say, okay, what does my gut say, and compare that with reason and objective rules in order to come to good conclusions. A lot of time our gut instinct can be too hasty and lead us astray. Jiminy Cricket, so this is sort of a personification of the conscience. Sometimes you also have a person and you'll have the angel on one side and the devil on the other. And those are both personifications of conscience that can sort of be helpful in making something that's ultimately pretty abstract a little bit more concrete. However, the problem is it separates the conscious from the self. It's this outer voice that tells you what to do. But remember that the conscience is very much about your own inner voice. And it's your voice. It's you. And we don't want to mistakenly externalize the conscience because it's very deeply part of who we are as people. Finally, myth. In the postmodern, post-Christian era, many people have just dismissed the conscience as a myth of a bygone time. And the problem with this, of course, is that ultimately it would lead to the death of morality. And that's, again, I think sometimes people think, well, what's wrong with that? That sounds great. Well, really, you wouldn't want to live in a society where there was no morality, because then people would just do whatever they wanted. So if I wanted your purse, I'd take it. If I wanted your husband, I'd take him. And you wouldn't want to live in a world like that. So we've kind of talked about what conscience is not. Now let's talk about what it is. All right. So the conscience is a judgment of reason. So this is very important to notice. We're going to keep coming back again and again to the notion of reason. Morality is all about using your intellect to come to an understanding of what's right and wrong, whereby the human person recognizes the moral quality. Okay, so this is key. Recognizing the moral quality. Sometimes people think that in and of itself is the conscience. It's just an awareness of right or wrong. But this capacity for an awareness, of right and wrong. This is sort of that gut instinct. This is what St. Thomas calls synderesis. So conscience goes beyond just an awareness. That's where it starts. Conscience is the judgment call that one makes using your sense of moral quality. And this is another key thing of a concrete act. So conscience is all about making a general sense of synderesis apply to specific situations. And that's why it's so important. So synderesis is just this general idea of do good, avoid evil. And sorry, my husband was trying to get my attention, I think. It's a general understanding of do good, avoid evil, but what conscience does is it makes it applicable to specific situations. So that's sort of one of the powers of conscience. So let me go back to the beginning because I kind of chopped it up there. So conscience is a judgment of reason whereby the human person recognizes the moral quality of a concrete act he is going to perform in the process of performing or has already completed. So you should be employing your judgment in every part of an action, before, during, and after. Now, of course, we don't always do that, but hopefully we will. That's what we'll be learning about this chapter. These are just some further quotes from your book in the Catechism. In all he says and does, man's obliged to faithfully follow what he knows to be just and right. And again, the knowing of it is the synderesis part, and the acting on it, the judgment call, is the conscience. It is by the judgment of his conscience that man perceives and recognizes the prescriptions of the divine law. And again, your conscience uses reason to look at objective moral norms and make a judgment call as to how to act. And this is from the Catechism. Conscience is the law of the mind. Conscience is a messenger of him who both in nature and in grace speaks to us behind a veil and teaches and rules us by his representatives. Conscience is the aboriginal vicar of Christ. So what they're saying is conscience is, by aboriginal, they mean the first vicar of Christ, the first representative of Christ before he comes in his person in Jesus Christ. He was first speaking to us through our hearts behind the veil. So that's kind of just nice little poetic imagery. Here's some more ideas from your book. So conscience is an awareness of God's call to be. It's the secret place in the core of our being where we're alone with God. Again, that's kind of a lovely poetic image. We should always keep in mind, though, it's our intentions, right? Conscience makes a judgment about what's right and wrong. And at the end of the day, God knows what your heart really means to do. God knows what your intentions are. So we can lie to other people. We can lie even to our own selves. But remember, intentions are key in deciding the degree to which you're morally right or wrong and responsible. And that dwells within your heart and the conscience. And God can see that even if no one else can. It's awareness of God's call to know him and to love. It's a basic awareness of good and evil. Again, that aspect is the synderesis, which is the basic awareness, do good, avoid evil, and the conscience employs that in decision making. It's the practical judgment of the intellect. Again, yeah, we use prudence, P-R-U-D-E. Prudence is that practical judgment where you're deciding on making a judgment as to what to do. It's personal, yet it must join the human community in the quest for truth. Again, that's all about your intellect. And applying the truth to our daily lives. That's where the conscience comes in. It's very practical. It's very, it's that judgment call we make within ourselves, hopefully using prudence and the intellect to come to judgments about our actions. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit about what conscience is. To make it even more clear, we're going to do this activity. If you are absent, you need to make this up. So it's called Classwork 5.21, Understanding Conscience, and it's on Schoology. I'll show you where it is right now. Whoops. Oh. All right, hang on. There we go. Woo. All right. If we scroll down again to the pink chapter 5 folder, go in classwork and discussions. Classwork, here it is. Classwork 5.21, Understanding Conscience. Here's the dates we're going to be working on this in class. So, what we're going to do in class is here are these different resources. So we have the National Catholic Register, we have the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and also there's going to be Bible quotes on this handout, and you're going to use those 3 sources to answer the questions, and we're going to do this in your families. The families will make a Padlet that answers their question. Then everyone's going to download this into Notability and take notes and turn it in. So if you're absent, you either need to complete all of this on your own or get notes from a friend and turn it in. Let me show you the handout. All right, so this is the handout, and it has the instructions on it. So, all right, so here you could see I have the, this is hyperlinked to the Catechism and the Bible. The NCR article, the numbers that, so for question 1, you need to look at section 5. I'll show you in a second. I have the paragraph numbers along the side to make it easier. But every family is assigned a question, and then you answer your question making a Padlet, and then you're going to present those, and then everyone is going to fill out this with their answers as each family presents and upload it. And there's also space to take extra notes. So if you're absent and you either need to get notes from a friend or complete this on your own. So you'll see again for example, with question 2, read what the Catechism, the National Catholic Reporter, and the Bible says about synderesis and conscience, then explain below how they are distinctive and how they work together. So you would read that and then the scripture, and let me go back and show you where the National Catholic Register article is. So, oops. Oh, hang on. All right, I apologize. I too clicky. Okay. So, that's see here, chapter 5, primary sources. That's the handout. Here's the National Catholic Register article. You could just download this for your reference and put it in Notability. So, oh dear, this isn't the right copy. I have a copy of this that has the paragraph numbers in the side. Let me go back. I might have to update this. Yeah, it appears they have the wrong PDF on here, but I will update this And when you look, I will update this, and when you go to look at it, you'll notice along the sides, there's going to be paragraph numbers that will say, help you to make it a little bit easier for you to find where the answers to the questions are. So that was our assignment that we did with groups. And again, if you're absent, you'll need to make sure to make that up. If you have any questions, please let me know. That was lesson 1 of chapter 5. We have 2 more lessons in chapter 5, and those will also be posted on Schoology for you. If you have questions, just send me an email.